Hi, Fiona Lewis here from Super Savvy Business with this week's website Word of the Week. Do you remember the song from your childhood called There's a Hole in My Bucket? Well, I'm really going to draw on that whole idea today when we talk about websites. I want you to imagine right now that you have a bucket and you want to fill your bucket with water, but you don't have one source to go and get the water. So you have to go down to the river and collect some water down there with a cup, and you start to fill your bucket up, and then you go down to the stream and you go and get a little bit of water down by the stream. You fill up your cup and you run back and put it in your bucket. And then you go down to a little pond where you find some more water, and so you fill up your cup and you put a little bit more in your bucket. The only problem is each time you come back to your bucket, you find that the water is leaking out because in your bucket you have a whole pile of holes. So it doesn't seem to matter how much effort you're putting in to go and get your water from all the different sources, the water just keeps flowing out. Now, we can relate this back to the whole idea of your website and bringing traffic to your website. You might have several different channels of bringing website traffic to you, but you might find when you look at Google Analytics that that traffic is bouncing or leaving your site almost as quickly as it goes. Or perhaps they're only viewing one page or two pages and then leaving. These are the holes in your website. And in today's video, I'd like to cover some ways that you can plug those holes and start to retain the traffic that you work so very, very hard to attract. When you think about the behavior of most internet users, when they're searching to find a solution to a problem and they're looking through many different websites, generally when they land on a website, it takes a couple of seconds for them to make a decision as to whether or not that website is going to be worth continuing to read or continuing to look into. So you only have those couple of seconds to grab somebody's attention. Now, how can you go about doing that best? Well, one of the things I recommend is to ensure that you have an attention-grabbing headline that is going to stop people in their track, get their attention, and then encourage them to read onwards. Now, if you manage to do that, you want to ensure then that the content that they're reading when they continue to read onwards is also going to maintain their attention. So I recommend that you consider using what we call emotional direct response copy, particularly on your homepage, as a way of trying to keep people there for longer. The other thing to consider, which is often overlooked by people, is to ensure that you have an appealing design. It's amazing, little things like having white writing on a black background, or writing that is really dense with not a lot of space or bold or italics or subheadlines can make that writing very, very difficult or more challenging for people to read. Also, just in the actual flow of the site, the way the site is laid out, if it's confusing when somebody gets to your site and it's not clear where the eye should look, then that could be a reason why people are clicking back and not actually staying on your site. So consider all of these elements as far as design is concerned, because even if you had a great headline, even having a bad design can encourage people to leave your site. The other thing I also recommend to all my clients through Super Savvy Business and Super Savvy websites is to avoid having links to external sites on the home page. Now, what happens is you do that is people might click on a link and then leave your site. You've spent a lot of effort trying to get that traffic to your site, so the last thing you want to do is start sending that traffic away. For example, a YouTube button is a really great thing to have on your site to encourage people to connect with you on YouTube. But did you actually know that you can have a YouTube subscribe box actually embedded on your website, so people can subscribe to your YouTube channel without having to actually physically leave your website? Now, talking about social media, I'd like to also bring up the idea of social proof, because this in itself can be a great way to encourage people to stay on your site. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with or have seen the Facebook like box on a lot of websites. If you don't have one of these, then it might be worth considering whether it's appropriate for your business and your market. Because this Facebook like box is very, very clever. What it will do is actually show the faces of the people that your web visitor is actually connected to. So these are people that they already know. So if you can imagine that Jane comes to Super Savvy Business, and when Jane arrives at my website, she sees three of her friends have already liked my Facebook page. That is social proof for her. That shows her that 3 of her friends are already connected with me, already trust me and like me, so that will encourage her to maybe look further into who I am and what my business is all about. It's a really simple strategy, yet is extremely effective. Another way to keep people on your site longer is to include internal links to other pages in your site. So for example, in your content, make sure you interlink them to each other. So as people are reading, they might click the link and land on another page of yours and continue reading more relevant content to what they're interested in. This is a very simple tactic to employ on your website, but it's certainly something that Google encourages us to do, and it can also even help with the strength of your site in the eyes of Google, because the longer people stay on your site, the more authority your site is seen to have on your particular topic. The final thing I'd like to touch on is to ensure that each of your pages has a strong call to action. Tell people what action you want them to do. What do you want them to do next? And this is something that we don't just do on our home page. This really should be incorporated into every single page of your site. Do you want them to register for an e-course? Do you want them to buy now? Think about all these things. What action do you actually want people to take? And make that very, very clear. This also, of course, relates back to the direct response copy. Even your little buttons that, for instance, if you have an opt-in box with an offer for a free e-course, rather than having just the word submit, you can have the words such as get free access to the e-course now, which is really a lot stronger than just the word submit. So these are just a couple of tips about plugging the holes in your website and trying to keep traffic on your site for longer, and then also getting that traffic actually to convert by taking the action that you want them to take. I hope that you found these tips useful. If you'd like to stay in touch, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to these weekly training videos at supersavvybusiness.com. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you next week. My name is Fiona Lewis, and stay tuned for our next Word of the Week update.